Hi, it's Monkey, and in this video, I want to give a behind-the-scenes look on the Spyro animation project I'm working on, and basically give you an idea how something this could be made, and kind of also why it's been taking so long, especially when I'm the only one mostly doing it. Now, before we get started, I first want to get some preamble stuff out of the way first, get the boring stuff out of the way. And first thing I want to address is why am I doing a behind the scenes video now and not after the thing's been released? And it's mainly because one, it's taken so long that well, I'd rather get this thing like off my to-do list, because I was planning on making something like this anyway, because you know, I like sharing things and like to kind of share like how something like this could be made. It doesn't have to be Spyro, it could be anything really. And the other reason is that it was going to be a bit more of a fancier, like, animated video, because, you know, if I'm going to talk about animation, I'm most will animate like a little like skit or demonstration on how this kind of thing works. But now I'm just kind of deciding to just do like a little, you know, live stream podcast style video instead, because it'll be faster and it'll just be something that's just out of the way. And once the final animation is done, then that's it. I don't have to worry about any of that afterwards, and I can finally take a break from doing this kind of thing. So, another thing I want to mention is that I'm a little congested right now, and unfortunately, there's only so many good times for me to record something. So, if you hear me kind of sound a little gruff, that's kind of why. I can't help it. It comes and goes. So, and the last thing I want to mention, which I kind of don't want to, but I think I might have to anyway, is making release videos that either get like 1,000 views or after 3 days kind of like flatline at like 300 views. And I'm not too particular on the views that I get, but at the same time I do care enough, like, you know, maybe people like this kind of stuff, maybe people actually want to see it. But liking and subscribing might be actually more important than I give it credit for, potentially. I don't know. I guess you can say this is more like a request, like if you do appreciate what I'm doing and want others to also see it, think about, you know, liking the video, not for you, but for others to potentially see it as well. I'm asking nicely. With all that stuff out of the way, let's go into, you know, the project itself, and kind of first start with kind of a very important question. Why? Why am I doing it? Well, aside from being a fun little hobby project, or quote-unquote little, it's also because I had like experience like 3D modeling, texturing, animating, kind of a bit of a 3D generalist, that's typically known as. And I'm also a bit of a low-key Spyro fan, so as soon as the opportunity brought up where, you know, there's like tools out there that let you like access these, you know, models and textures, I kind of took that and ran with it, and just kind of seeing what kind of fun stuff I can come up with, and also use it as a bit of a learning experience. Because I don't really do this kind of like animation stuff often, and I'm kind of using like, I guess, this like old like beautiful Spyro models in a way of exploring that and kind of, you know, getting experience with that. When I first initially started doing this, because this is not the first time I actually done this, there's like a video I made showing me like creating like these little goofy short animated intros for a thing called like International Spyro Grand Prix. It's like this kind of like casual speedrunning competition tournament series I was helping out with. There was like a lot of videos being edited and made at the time, and instead of like creating this like 5-second like little intro that all of them had, I instead like try to find ways to like make the intro a little bit more interesting, so it kind of breaks up like the monotony of it, add a little variety. And eventually I kind of found out about these tools, one of which being called Spyroscope, which allows you to kind of take the in-game camera and move it around. And kind of how I got started was making this like very old school like machinima type of videos, basically, where I just move the camera around, made Spyro hop around a little bit, do a little skit, and from there I kind of went from that to just straight up doing things in a program called Blender. You might have heard of it, and just figuring out how to, like, you know, use other tools that were available to extract you know, levels, props, character models, and then use my knowledge to like rig and animate like some goofy shorts from there, and just doing like some inside jokes kind of things with it. I wasn't really taking that seriously at all, but now I'm doing something where instead of like just using like pre-existing locations and pre-existing assets, I'm trying to like make something new out of it, and, you know, create like a more unique scenario that I think might be interesting. Speaking of ideas, why am I animating Spyro delivering a package? Well, it's mainly because I was trying to like think of like an idea that's kind of like in spirit, I think, of like the game themselves. And one of the main key aspects I think is going to various different locations, right? You like be exploring like temples or castles or mountains. So I figured I would have like a plot that kind of revolves around travel. And eventually I came with the idea of Spyro, delivering something that would give like a reason for that to actually happen. And then from there, just like think about like the locations that he would be going to, and because it's really just me doing it, go like, okay, let's not make it too complicated. My best attempt to not make it complicated. And that was basically the general idea, right? Have Spyro deliver a package from point A to point B and just kind of figure out a plot that kind of happens along the way, pretty much. Again, I'm not taking it too seriously, because I don't know, I guess I'm not trying to be too like particular about world building, but despite my efforts, I did eventually sort of start doing it because I needed something to animate around. So like a lot of this is like improv, go like, why would a character like say things like this, or why would this be here, or why is Spyro on a boat? So yeah, that's basically why the plot the way it is, right? It's just fake for like having Spyro go to like different locations, and also kind of like a, I guess, sort of unintentionally a vehicle for kind of sort of how the Dragon Realms might potentially operate. And I guess also trying to think of it almost like a jigsaw puzzle, like trying to see if I can make the pieces still sort of somewhat fit, like they are like based on things you see in the games itself, but kind of used in a different way, right? Especially the whole boat thing, right? So with all that said, let's go into what I call the plan. And the plan is to kind of figure out how I'm going to approach a project like this, because I did a few animations inside of Blender before, but now I want to do something a little different, because while I do like using Blender, at some point there's some clunkiness to it I didn't really like. For example, triggering like particles, you have to like set like a specific frame number or something every time you want to set one off, and I'm going like, I've used things in the past like game engines that just, you just say when it happens and it just does, and you're like, can I just animate with like Unity or Unreal instead? Like, even though it's a game engine, still technically animate through it, and like, that would be nice. And then around the same time, apparently Unreal added something known as Control Rig, which basically gives you the ability to rig something and animate something directly inside the game engine. And I also have some experience with Unreal as well, so I don't see why not. So yeah, just kind of wait with like, poke around with it first, kind of see if that's kind of viable to do to begin with. And once I sort of figured that out, I just kind of went ahead with it. And that's kind of why I'm animating this thing using Unreal Engine instead of Blender this time around. So for script, I kind of started making that in I think December 2023, like late December, actually. So yeah, a little while. And then eventually, after making the script, I then started working on, models and rigging and all that stuff proper in February 2024. For the script, I made a use of a piece of software known as Causality, which is not your typical script writing software. It's actually more like a little bit more akin to like video editing software, where you have like quote unquote clips or script snippets or blocks, where you can like create like a block of like script, put on your timeline, and then you can like, rearrange it. Like, does it show up at this time? Does it show up at this time? You can like mark like, characters show up in it. You can add like, I guess, dependencies, so you can't like do things out of order. And you also have like a little note-taking section, and there's a lot of different things in it that I guess the key word for the software is keeping things organized. Yeah, so I worked on that in December 2023 and started making models and stuff like that in 2024 February. And I started by making changes to the Spyro model and also the Elder models, because one issue I was kind of starting to run into, they're PS1 models, so they're gonna be limited anyway, but they're probably a little bit too limited to my liking, where like Spyro can only look around so much before it kind of like hits the edge of their eye socket, because what I was doing is basically move around the texture on the eye a little bit, but it was kind of like stuck to the geometry. I was physically moving the geometry around to do it, and it kind of gives them like, well, one, this like bug-eyed look to their eyes, and very limited movement is the issue. So my first task on making this thing work is actually changing it to something I learned about, which is like this kind of like 2D-esque iRig. It's almost like you take like 2 pieces of paper, cut a circle out of one of them, and then slide the other one underneath it, and that's how this rig essentially works. It's basically the head. So I also took the opportunity to like add like proper like teeth and lips and also digits to, if nothing else, just do like the bare minimum to kind of help the character be a bit more expressive, while still like, you know, not changing it too much, intentionally keeping the proportions basically the same. And it definitely looked a little weird. It took me a little while to get used to it, especially with Spyro now being capable of like doing this like 1,000-yard stare if I'm not careful. But I'd say it turned out pretty well, and now looking back at my old animations, I kind of like the new one a little better. And I also did the same for like the elders, and I had like some interesting results when I tried to do it first. And then I kind of figured out what the problem is, and it worked a little better. And yeah, that's kind of why these characters now have like, you know, they have like proper digits, their eyes are a bit more expressive and that kind of thing, because they're gonna be doing an animation like this, especially if it's long. There's only so much you can do with like the PS1 models the way they were, so I just made modifications just enough to get it where I wanted it to be and be a bit more flexible and more expressive. And I like to call these like enhanced versions of the PS1 models, essentially, while trying to keep the proportions and the kind of, I guess, kind of spirit of them in mind, if there is such a thing. So from there, I then started diving into Control Rig, right, at this point, after making changes to models, and then just kind of start rigging them up. Managed to get some hand stuff out of it. The rig itself is not complicated, but it definitely was ahead to get it working at first. And even now, there are some things that are still kind of broken, depending on how I work with it, which I'll kind of show off when I get a chance in a bit. But for the most part, basically got like a nice rig up and running, and made it in a way where I can like just reuse it, right? I can use it on Spyro or any like dragon child model, I guess, as well, because they use the same skeleton. Same thing for the elders, and I think at one point also used it for one other character that doesn't have wings or a tail, but they still have everything else, like 4 limbs, head, neck, that kind of thing. So like, you know, I already have the rig, I might as well use it on that one as well. So Control Rig is kind of flexible, right? Once you know how to kind of get it up and running, you can get a lot of use out of it. So it's a reusable rig, essentially. So that is very helpful. So that's the script, that's the models, the character models anyway, and the rig. And now from there, we need to make our environment and then set up our camera shots and all that kind of stuff. And at this point, this is where I'm going to switch over from me just talking to showing you something in Blender and how it currently looks like, and kind of give you almost like a virtual tour of sorts, essentially. So yeah, let's go and head over to Blender, and then after that, after kind of looking at stuff in Blender for a bit, we'll then head over to Unreal and kind of see how things currently look. And I'm going to try not to spoil things too much, I suppose, if you care about that. But I don't make any promises. You might get a little bit of spoiler thing going on, but well, I gotta show it off somehow. So yeah, let's head over to Blender and see what's going on over there. Alright, so time to look at stuff in Blender, right? It's for all your 3D modeling needs, right? And first thing I want to show you here is the first environment that the animation kind of takes place in, which I just kind of called Artisan Bay. You're only going to see what you're going to see in the short, so I don't see the point of modeling everything. Basically, trying to make like, I don't know, the best I can think of like a little like, you know, bay town of sorts that the first like thing happens in. And reason why there's buildings everywhere is that, you know, if you pay attention, there's like places like Town Square and Stone Hill and things like that, where there's definitely structures, and I know it kind of gives me the impression that the dragons may or may not have built them. so I didn't see why not make like an actual like sort of small town with these buildings. And admittedly in hindsight, I could have made these less square, blocky looking, because the way I built these is like almost like, you know, building like Lego bricks and then stitching them together. In hindsight, I could probably made these a bit more, I guess, organic looking, but oh well. And I figured give you a little bit of a rough tour on basically how all this is assembled together, and also kind of show you some tips and tricks here and there that, you know, if you want to do something similar to this, might help you out, right? That's kind of partly what one thing I want to do here during this whole behind the scenes thing. I guess I'll just kind of show you sort of how I made things work and how you could potentially do that yourself. So where did I start? Well, when I initially started making these environments, I actually tried to initially block these out in Unreal, which in hindsight, you don't really want to do that, especially the way things need to be like textured and just created in general. And Unreal does technically have modeling tools, at least Unreal 5 does. I think Unreal 4 might have them, but in my experience, they're kind of clunky. They're not as intuitive as I'd like them to be. Either that or I'm just used to using Blender more. What I essentially did is I kind of started out with at least blocking out the scene. So this is actually what it looked like initially. It kind of looked like this. And just kind of just in general, kind of like, you know, general idea like how the buildings might be laid down, how the environment might look. And you also kind of see the start of these little like structures where some of the scenes are actually happening in. So like, you know, I guess kind of like a little like shop kind of building, like there's like a doorway, window, back room essentially. A little hole here, where something will happen. And kind of same thing over here. Started animating like the scene, kind of roughly block things out, just in this kind of like grayish like building before I come back into Blender. Because you actually can like export things out from Unreal into Blender if you want to. So that way you can like, you know, model things at scale. Which one thing that's definitely important is, you know, keeping your physical scale in mind, like things like meters, centimeters, etc. Make sure both Unreal and Blender are working at the same scale. Yeah. So basically, kind of initially plop down some buildings, some terrain, all that, all inside Blender. It lets you do this kind of thing. Brought it into Blender, and then kind of went from this to fleshing it out to be like this, right? So that's technically the modeling part. What about the texturing part? Well, for texturing, at least the way the PS1 Spyro games do it, they basically use kind of like an old school like sprite sheet kind of approach, or tile map approach, where every polygon has a texture assigned to it, right? And it usually works very nice for four-sided polygons, or quads for short, right? And you can also texture triangles as well, but the only cases where you probably would want to texture or use triangles like this is if the texture itself is something that's not very specific, like things like grass or ice. Just anything doesn't have like a very clear like edge to it, like this little trim texture right here I like to call them. That kind of transitions from like, you know, one thing to another thing, and in hindsight, I'm not sure I'm using a texture for the bottom which has grass on it when this is already here. Oops. No, well. In fact, I can give you a good demonstration since I'm here. So hey, we're both learning something. And I'm gonna switch over from this layout to my model. Actually, not that one. This one, my UV editing layout. So I'll jump to this, and I'll immediately jump into what is known as edit mode. Blender likes hotkeys, and I like them too, so I usually hold down tab. I think I have it set up in the settings where I can hold down tab and get this little radial or pie menu here, so I can go from object to edit mode like that. I'm gonna like click on different polygons here, and off to the side on my left, I have a tile map, or texture sheet, or trim sheet, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's a texture with lots of little textures in it, right? And they're all like, I think 64 by 64 pixel textures that are arranged in here. And I'm just mapping every single one of these polygons to these. So I'm gonna do myself a favor. I'm gonna grab all of these, right? They're all mapped to the same texture. And I'm just gonna scoot this over from here to here. I'm just gonna hit A to select all of it, and then hit G to drag this over. Right? And there we go. Problem fixed. Just like that. I have the texture for that, so might as well just remap it to that one, and there we go. Then when I want to update these changes into my actual project, I would just then re-import them into Unreal by exporting out of them from Blender to FBX, and then just update it afterwards. Long story short, for doing something like this, you want to stick to four-sided polygons. It likes those the most, and they're easy thing to map, right? But there are some cases where, let me see here. Oh yeah, this building, for example, I'm gonna hit, in my case, D on the keyboard. I think it's mapped to something else, where you can, like, you know, hit a hotkey that'll let you transfer from one object to another, but still keep you in edit mode, for those that might know what that is. And that just lets me quickly pop over this object right here. I'm gonna click on these two polygons right here, because this is a situation where I can't just use a four-sided polygon, right? Like, I have this four-sided polygon over here that's using this whole texture, but then I got this one which I'm treating as the same thing, but there's like a, you know, a hole right there. It's called a window. And instead what I'm doing is I'm just mapping part of the texture to 2D2 polygon instead, and just doing some more old school unwrapping in here. And I'm also doing things where in my UV editor I have this snapping option turned on. Right, make sure I'm snapping to a grid in here, and I think that grid, if I scroll on this little toolbar here, because you actually can't scroll this if you can't see all of it, and also set the actual like lines on the grid, you can go over to this outline overlay button right here, click on this little arrow and turn on grid. And I usually like to leave it on dynamic, so all right, so yeah, so basically do that. Then I go in here and like start moving these points around. It will snap to the nearest grid point. This lets me kind of like nicely keep things lined up, and yeah, basically get something like that. And I don't think I have to go over the modeling part. The modeling part is kind of what you would expect for most modeling, right? It's just like polygons, right? I can like do things like, you know, go to edit mode, grab like a face, hit E to extrude, or like delete a face, grab like an edge instead and extrude that, and just kind of extrude like a strip of polygons. And Blender sometimes will try to figure out how the map to use for something like that. Sometimes it won't. And basically modeling's more or less been that, right? If I need more edges, I can use things like the knife tool, which I can use K for. Or if I need to do something just more simple, I can hit J, select 2 points, and it'll just kind of create an edge through it. So little things like that, and you know, until I get an actual environment working. And with all that shown off, I'm going to show you two other things in Blender. Then I'll finally go over to Unreal Engine and kind of show you, you know, the control rig stuff that I've been mentioning earlier, and kind of how that's sort of set up and how that works. And after that, that'll just wrap up basically what I've been doing so far. And yeah, so let's go on to our next stop here, which is, well, since I'm in this environment anyway, I can like look in like these buildings here, and the buildings look kind of empty because this is really just like the buildings and the terrain, but not really anything like props and such. Where are those located? Well, if I go and open up my separate Blender file here, and oh, it crashed on me. All right, welcome back. I don't know why Blender crashed on me. I guess it didn't like me talking for so long. I bored it to death. So anyhow, in this file, this is my prop gallery, essentially, because you don't necessarily have to make one object per prop. You can just stuff them all into one file. And this is basically all these like little doodads and makeshift like props I have in here, and some of them have textures and some of them have just plain old vertex colors on them. I was basically like trying to think of, like, you know, what to put in like the scene just for sake of like filling out so it feels like it's a bit more, you know, occupied. There's like a family of dragons called artisans, but you don't see them do any art. So I'm trying to think of like, you know, things that might be related to that. So like a little easel, a little like painting thing, which is done with vertex color because I thought it'd be amusing to do that way. From what I've noticed, they usually like try to things that are kind of like more naturally resourced. Nothing like that's kind of like, you know, manufactured too much as anything that can be like, you know, done with like, you know, made forged in fire or done by hand, using natural elements. So I try to like base the props around that, and also just kind of making props for the sake of props. So I just have something to put into the scene. One day I just kind of decided like I'm just gonna sit down and just wherever I think I'm just gonna maul it, and then maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't use it. For example, I think I have this weird little like dragon elder helmet that I think shows in one scene, but it's never really used. And they're like, it's an idea. I'm not sure if it looks too goofy on them or not, though, having one of these on their head. That's why this model is in here, just a little like placeholder model, so I can actually, you know, make props and actually see if they can actually physically hold it or not. And, yeah. Basically, this is how I've been purchasing props. This is like a whole gallery of different objects in here, right? They're all next to each other, so I have like an idea of like the physical scale of what all of these items would be, right? But for the most part, just, you know, I have a number of props. Like some of them have textures, most of them don't. Because I'm not really good at making textures, so I just use the textures from the games themselves. And, you know, other props I can go like, it's like a very small prop. I can just use vertex colors on it, and it gets the job done. So like, yeah, that's basically how the props are being made, right? Just kind of noodling around in here, kind of creating certain props. I have like this chest in here. I think I have like this other chest back here as well, because I guess I want to add a little more variety to like, you know, the type of chests that are in there, and just kind of repurpose some assets. So like, this is basically the same thing as this, but with like the jewels removed. Like, don't need all of them to be decorated. And again, for the sake of having something a little different. So that's what the props look like. So I'm gonna move on to the last thing I'll show you in Blender here. Hopefully it doesn't crash again. And the last thing is this right here, right? So this is one of the elder models that's been modified to have like, you know, proper like teeth and digits and all that. And I just kind of took the wings from like Spyro's model and Spyro 2 and just slapped onto them, because I thought the wings from Spyro 1 looked, I don't know, kind of painful. In fact, do I still have these in here? Let me check. I might have some older assets in here. The models that I'm using in the short are just modified versions of these, and some of these have very bad texture mapping because I think I did something that caused that. So, and basically try to like, you know, keep the general look of them intact, proportions kind of intact, but also make modifications like this wings, for example. I think it's just like one texture being used over again, and like parts of like the wing are like, wings are like similar to like an arm, or like, you know, like an upper arm, a forearm, and a wrist. But then there's like this part, or like this part's poking into their back, basically. Like, I don't know if I like that. So I basically kind of just went ahead and kind of replaced it with something that has, I guess, a bit more geometry to it, a bit more fleshed out, while trying to sort of keep the portions intact. And also having to go on my way to like, you know, the tool I use to get these is known as Spyro Model Extractor. The way it works is that it just extracts, like, at least for these characters, it extracts them in the pose they're in with the animation of playing. There's no like T-posing yet, so I'd like forcibly put them into a T-pose for like rigging and modeling purposes. So let me see. So I'm gonna switch back to here. So this is kind of the end result of that. Trying to keep the proportions intact and general idea intact, but also trying to make tweaks to it where it might not be super obvious. In fact, I might have possibly overcorrected a little bit, where I also modified the mouth, not just for the sake of the teeth, but also you can like sort of still see their expression from the side a little bit to make it a bit more triangular-ish. But I think that might not be working out because I now that I look at it, I probably should have made it a bit more triangular-ish, right? It's kind of sweet as so you can actually see, like, you know, if they're like smiling or frowning without having to like animate the character, have where the side of their head is visible, so you can actually tell what expression they're making. So, so nothing super fancy. Let me see here. Let me get the wireframe going. There we go. So digits are really just like cubes, really, to kind of keep it like fitting with the rest of the model. They're a bit more dense to allow a little bit more flexibility, but nothing super complex to add in. I basically just took whatever model I can get from Spyro 1 and just stitched these on, essentially. And yeah, that's about it. And since I'm here for the rig itself, since I'm going to be showing you that anyway, so in Blender here, I basically have probably a basic armature, basically just an object that lets you have virtual bones for a model and lets you like move it and puppeteer it, right? I'm not going to go over that too much. There's plenty of places online you can learn about that. But basically, like, set up a general armature, plop some bones in, have some like parent to each other, so, like, you know, for a wing, like if I move the base of the wing, the rest will move with it, things like that. And then wait to model to it. And I think I also have like a few test pods in here. If I were to hide that a little bit, I think down here is known as the dope sheet, and I have it set to action editor, and I can just pick different animation clips or actions in here in this list. So I have like one for like testing like the body poses, make sure the limbs are moving properly, so I don't actually like weight like the fingers to like the legs by accident, for example. So nothing super complicated, because I have like a few different variants of this model. Some in like colors, so I can like go in here and like set different like I guess palettes, I guess, or color attributes that have different palettes, and I just export the same model with different like vertex colors. And I have a few different variations here. There's one where like a little white around the the hip area there. There's like some models like that. There's this goofy attempt at making a different version of an artisan model, which I don't know, if it almost looks like a weird squirrel monkey or something. The way these cheeks almost look like they're puffing out. It looks okay, I think, but could look better. Oh well. For sake of variety, it gets the job done. And again, I think if I were to select in here, have like this whole like outliner with a bunch of different objects in here. Got all that. One like purple, one brown. So basically just finding a way to like kind of quickly have like different varieties of like of these models that I can quickly like set up and work with and just kind of kick out the door so I can get into Unreal. And you also notice there's like a little prop on his wrist, because even though I could like, create different variants of models and such like that, it at some point comes a little hard to tell them apart, because most of them don't have names, and I need some way to like visually make them distinct from each other. So I started like thinking about like, how to make them different aside from like, proportions and coloring. And I'm going like, it probably wouldn't make much sense for dragons to wear clothing, because, clothing burns. So instead I'm going like, these dragons like treasure, they might collect treasures, so I don't see why they want to wear accessories that involve that, right? So that might not look out of place, that might fit. So I'm starting to slowly work that into some of these models. I'll have like one where it's just all color variations, and then one with like assets built into it. Yeah, so there's a Peacekeeper model. I don't have to show all of these, I'm just showing some of them since I'm here. I might cut some of this out. Trying like different like shades on it. Some look better than others. Beastmaker's one. I think this one's just the Claude, I think, character model. Just tipped differently. And I think Magic Crafters is in here as well. Just kind of play around with various ideas and kind of see how it pans out. One more thing I want to mention since I'm here is because of the fact I'm having like different like varieties of like dragon elders here. Some of them have different proportions technically, which means the placement of the bones on the armature also have to be different, right? And one thing Unreal lets you do is that you can share the same skeleton, and you can also change the proportions of each character that still has the same skeleton, like the bones are the same, they're named the same, they're attached the same way, but they're placed a little differently. Unreal lets you do that. You just have to make sure that you don't tweak anything otherwise, and just kind of export it with that modified skeleton, right? And then it'll just work. For like a control rig, it'll let you like adapt it to that skeleton. So if their proportions are a little different, you can tell it like realign like the different controls on the rig, and it'll just work from there. The only thing I have to make sure of is that every time I export, I have to name the armature the same way, character armature in this case. I don't have to call it that, but if you leave it called armature, I think Blender does something odd where it'll like, I think it's either Blender or FBX or Unreal, I'm not sure which one does it. It'll actually treat that as a different type of object if you leave it called armature instead of something else. So that's why I have it named like this, and I just have to make sure. For every copy of this armature, each one has the same armature copied over. I have to kind of go in it and like rename it, just so it'll export out properly. Okay. You think it wouldn't be so complicated to talk about, but it is. It's usually easier to do it rather than talk about it. So, alright. So with that whole spiel, I think we're now done looking at Blender. And now we're going to see what things look like inside Unreal Engine. Let's go and head over there finally.